Hello, friends and history buffs. Thank you for joining in the 50 Chinese old sayings with Michael again. How are you guys doing today? My name is Michael Lu. For today's episode of the 50 Chinese old sayings we will be doing, there are always excuses available to condemn somebody as guilty. Again, there are always excuses available to condemn somebody as guilty. In Chinese, it's 欲加之罪，何患无辞。欲加之罪，何患无辞. It is used when someone knows for sure that he is bound to be found guilty by the accuser, one way or the other. This old saying is still being used nowadays when the accused claims innocence in front of false charges. This is a story about what Li Ko has said before being found guilty and killed by the Jinhui Duke, who we mentioned in our 8th episode to have been an ungrateful and merciless ruler. Li Ko had been Jinhui Duke's father's #1 advisor and army commander, a Julius Caesar military strongman kind of guy, while another key person was Shaanxi, and he was the guy who had suggested bribing the Youstay with the horses and jade artifacts, and acting as Li Ko's deputy commander in their military expeditions to take out both the Guo state and the You state, as we have mentioned in the 6th episode. Li Ko was a strong supporter of Ji Shenshan as the Jinxie Duke's eldest son, forced to kill himself after the poisoned meat incident orchestrated by the Li princess for herself and her son Ji Shiqi, both of whom Li Ko had plotted to have killed at the father's funeral. Shaanxi, the first prime minister appointed by the father while he was alive, would not dare getting to the bottom of this, knowing that Li Ko had been behind the coup and assassinations. Instead, he chose to have the Jinxie Duke's younger son, Ji Jiuqi, born to the late Li Princess' younger sister, as Ji Shixi's successor, who again was killed by Li Ko's hitman. But this time, Li Ko had not spared Shaanxi for old time's sake, so that Shaanxi had to kill himself, failing his old master's wish to have Ji Shiqi as his successor. As we have mentioned in the 8th episode, after Ji Chong'er had turned down Li Ko's invitation to go back to the Jin state, then came his younger brother Ji Yiwu, who ultimately took the throne through Qingmu Duke's full support by the good office of his older sister, the Bo princess. But Ji Yiwu had later become the Jinhui Duke, had gone back on almost each and every promise made to the people who had helped him along the way. For one thing, he had promised the Bo princess to take care of the rest of the family so that old family members out on the run could return to their own country again, including Ji Shenshan's widow. But he had failed to do any of that, to his older sister's grave disappointment, by keeping everybody out except Ji Shenshan's widow, whom he had made become one of his mistresses, which could have been the main reason leading to his loss of his old sister's support, and then, of course, her husband Qingmu Duke's support. Meanwhile, his relationship with Li Ko was becoming tense by the days, until he finally decided that Li Ko must go, because for one thing, he did not want to give him the land as he had promised, and secondly, because he simply could not trust the guy as someone who initially had picked his 2 older brothers for the job. He first had him relieved of all military commands, then sent his top henchman and follower, Pi Fu, away as his emissary to the Qing state, Then one day he had Li Kuo's house surrounded by his troops and tried to patronize by saying, "Although you have helped a lot bringing me back home, you remain a slayer of two Jing's rulers, Ji Qiqi and Ji Qiuqi, not to mention having Shangxi, the prime minister, commit suicide. And for all these bloodsheds happening in the royal court, you would have to bear the consequences." Knowing that he had it coming for himself, Li Kuo had first sighed to say this famous quotation before cutting his own throat with a sword. There are always excuses available to condemn somebody as guilty. He then pointed his finger at the Jinghui Duke to say his last words, seeing that you would not have gotten any of what you have now had it not been for me doing all the killings for you in the first place. I have nothing more to say. Hey guys, this wraps up today's episode of the 50 Chinese old sayings. There are always excuses available to condemn somebody as guilty. Again, there are always excuses available to condemn somebody as guilty. In Chinese, it's 欲加之罪,何患无辞. Again, 欲加之罪,何患无辞. Many thanks for you to join in and listen to this episode of the 50 Chinese old sayings with Michael. And until next time, I wish you all the best. Goodbye and have a nice day.